I'm Brandon Miller, and you are listening to Coach. This weekly series dives deep into the world of Clifton strengths and how they impact your daily life. Hear from certified strengths coaches on the ins and outs, quirks, and characteristics of all 34 strengths and 4 domains and how they play out in real life. Let's get started. Hello, welcome back. Season 2 of the Strengths Whisperer Coach to Coach. Today I have with me Brea Roper, BreaRoper.com. If you are a coach, especially if you are an internal coach and your responsibility is to sustain and engage a strengths initiative inside of your organization, Brea is the person that you want to talk to. We are going to dive into all things connectedness today. But I also have to tell those of you that are podcast fans, Lead Through Strengths with host Lisa Cummings has Brea as a co-host for this next season. So after several years hiatus, Lead Through Strengths is back. And it's Lisa with Brea. Brea, welcome to Coach.
Great. Thanks for having me, Brandon. It's so great to be here.
I'm so excited to talk connectedness with you. But first, why don't you tell us how it's going on the podcast?
I lead with communication, number one. So any chance that I get to talk, I love it. And doing that with my buddy, my strengths buddy, Lisa, is just amazing. It's been wonderful. Yeah.
Awesome. And so you love to help coaches who are doing the really important work of wanting to build internal strength around a strengths initiative. And so love to hear a little more about that.
You know, I lead with a lot of influencing talents. So impact is really important to me. And, you know, we'll talk probably about this when we talk about connectedness, but doing meaningful work is really important to me. So anybody that loves strengths, I love talking to you. If you're trying to, implement strengths at work or in your everyday life, in your family or whatever, but there's greater impact when I am helping the helpers or coaching the coaches, right? So if you are at a company, if you're at a church, if you're at in a family, if you are trying to sustain or build a strengths culture, if you're trying to implement strengths-based principles, then I want to be there to be your resource. I want to be there to answer the questions, as someone who's in it every day and all day, every day, it's one of the many hats that you're wearing. Let me be your expert. Let me be your guide. Let me be your resource. Let me be your cheerleader. Let me come alongside you and help you do the awesome work that you're doing.
Oh, I love it. And that is going to tee us up brilliantly for connectedness. So this is one of my most interesting, engaging strengths because I like to tell people this is the broadest of all the strengths. Like there are so many ways to think of the multidimensional aspect of connectedness. And what Brea and I are going to attempt to do today. Now, this is going to be hard for both of us.
Yeah. Because connectedness wants to go everywhere,
Oh my gosh, yes. We're going to talk about connectedness without connecting it to any other strengths. So we're going to just isolate down to connectedness. Now, I have to tell you, friends, that connectedness is going to want to connect everything and everyone and every other strength. And, because Brea can tell us, well, because I'm communication, here's how connectedness shows up. Or because I'm influence, here's, and in this season, Brea, we've done a really good job of, okay, everyone, imagine you're going to the gym and you're just going to work out your bicep. That's all this session is about, is we're going to focus in on one. So for all of you who've been following along, we've done a pretty good job up to this point, just bringing it down. Now, don't worry, because it could be another season coming up, and we're going to get to play with all of the fun features and facets of a strength. I like to say every strength is like a diamond. It has multiple faces, and depending which way you look at it, how the light hits it, it has such incredible variance. But this strength could, to some people, it could be an enigma wrapped up in a paradox, around a vortex. Like, it's just like, huh? What? And so we're going to get into like the basics of connectedness can equal connections. Like, that's like base, bring it down, relationship building domain, connectedness. Folks like to connect, but then we got to go up, and we got to go up into like spiritualization, and everything happens for a reason. And there's all these facets to the different ways that this can play out. And so here we go. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
All right. Are you ready? Okay. So Bria, talk to us about connectedness. Tee us up.
Well, it is very broad, and it's hard because you say, well, if connectedness existed in a vacuum, by itself in a vacuum, what would it look like? What would it sound like? How would it act? And in true connectedness fashion, I can 100% say it doesn't. None of the talents do, right? So we can do our best, but that really is a great place to start talking about connectedness, because connectedness can't not see the connections. It can't exist by itself. So when that comes to relationships, when that comes to working with other people, connectedness loves collaboration. Connectedness loves being with people, doing things with people, that, being connected at a relational level, I think is a great place to start.
Yeah, I love it, because I have a cue card with me today on this one. And so I'm going to read off a couple things, and we're just going to let it layer today. We're going to let it just come down. So people with connectedness value deep connections and creating community. And I would say that's a pretty typical box you can check here. That I love the bridge builder term. So they are connectors by nature. And I've seen this play out professionally with just the ability to find alignment with people, and just, be someone that, and perhaps you could even speak to this, that connectedness folks in general, they look to build community, not tear it down. In fact, great dissonance when it starts to feel like, well, we're tearing things down, or we're tearing others down, and actually push away or repel from that negative side of having to break bonds. Would you say that's accurate?
For sure. And I think connectedness is especially sensitive to isolation, and really anyway, right? That could be relational, and most of the time it is, but it also just could be thinking in an isolated way. Taking a fact by itself is not interesting to connectedness. It thrives by, I learned some new information, and immediately connectedness is like, ooh, that connects to this, or that connects to that. It really is relational, not just in a people sense, in all the ways that you could be in relationship with something else. For me, I really see connectedness as relationship with myself, relationship with others, like in a one-on-one relationship, and also maybe in a group relationship or some kind of organized relationship. But then there's the more general sense of just being connected to the world. Connectedness can really think at a global level really fast, right? And the world could also just be environment, nature, that's where sometimes people call it the woo-woo strength, or that sense of spirituality that you kind of mentioned, can come in, and it doesn't always mean God, or it could mean a lot of different, spiritual things, or a mystical kind of nature about it. So those are the primary relationships that I see, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with other people, and then your relationship with like the cosmos, like everything else.
I have found coaching others with this strength that it does require really a user's interpretation. If you could set out there a really broad definition of all the angles one might take to define this as a strength they have, and then the user has to pick which ones they relate to. Because when you mention God, I have met many people with high connectedness who have very deep faith, very deep and abiding faith. And that's where it ports in for them. They port into their sense of knowing that everything happens for a reason. And they ascribe that to their maker. They ascribe that to that way of thinking. And then I've met other people with high connectedness that it is very rooted and grounded in what you were describing, that sense of community, that sense of understanding that we all impact each other. And a common one is environment, climate, caring for the way the world handles itself. And so I've seen really interesting, and then I've seen both of those. So it's a fascinating strength. I love to study it and look at it and flip it and, engage with it, because if most of the strengths are like, 7-sided diamonds, I look at connectedness like 27 sides. Yeah. Like this one, I'm like, well, which way do you want to flip it? Because this one can go a whole lot of ways. And so I want to ask you this question, because you have this strength. When you think about how this actually comes out in terms of its effectiveness, right? So effectiveness at work, effectiveness in relationships, effectiveness in life, where do you see the strength of this strength showing up?
Yeah. So it's interesting because the raw connectedness, which doesn't necessarily mean bad, okay? Sometimes people think raw is bad and mature is good, but raw just means we haven't really developed it yet. So I think raw connectedness can be a strength, right? Because connectedness is good. Raw connectedness might be kind of like cloudy or confused. It might introduce some confusion into the place because it sees so many things that other people don't see. And if connectedness also has communication attached to it, then all of a sudden you're talking about things that people are like, whoa, what the heck are you talking about, right? But at the very least, it's internal confusion, because connectedness is like, okay, you just asked me that question, but now I'm thinking of 10 different ways that I could answer which one does he want, So I think its effectiveness can be so good if the situation needs that. If it needs a lot of information or creative thinking, or if it needs to go a lot of different places, or that can be very effective. I think maybe a stronger use, a better use, a more mature use is to say, what does the situation need, and how can my connections, whatever that means, whether it's networking connections or resources, or what connections am I seeing that could be most helpful or most effective? And I just think if you have someone with connectedness in your life, then they most likely are just a terrific resource for you to approach and say, what am I not thinking of? Or what's out there that I might take a look at.
Isn't that fascinating? Because connectedness seems to find its path around people. And yet what you just mentioned, and I think it's very true, that people with high connectedness help us connect to a bigger cause or picture.
Or meaning or purpose might be, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I have found this strength to do a very good job of bringing us back to meaning, purpose, motive, cause. And so on a team, people with high connectedness, in addition to Bria's comment about resources and knowing others and that skill set around building, very strong and committed networks around usually like purpose. Usually they'll connect into like purpose, and yet at the same time, help a team think bigger, help a team think beyond just what the impact is now to, okay, well now let me take you to the bigger picture that I can see. And it's there that I've told people that this strength and strategic are cousins because they're so intuitive. They're so commonly intuitive. And this one, because it has almost an ability to sense and know before they know they know. Like, I know that I know it, but I don't know how I know it, but I know it. I know it, and it's right. And then you test it, and you're like, well, they're right. And so there's an instinct here that the mature version, you can watch it really grow and really take shape. And I love to see it in leaders that really learn to go with those instincts that they have.
It's interesting because you're right. It is so intuitive. I mean, you can't even find words to express how intuitive it is. And it's interesting because connectedness is traditionally not found in top 5. Like most people don't have it as one of their top 5 strengths. So with connectedness, that's super weird because you just assume that everyone else intuits or sees or hears what you see or intuit or hear. So an example of that is, I spent a lot of time in a lot of Bible studies. I was a missionary for 4 years, and I could see connections, like we read something in the Bible and then I'm like, ooh, that sounds a lot like this. Or, ooh, I can find an example in my life that just happened. And it just happened. Like it was just so clear to me in my mind, these connections. And when I would speak up and say, hey, like, I was kind of thinking of this, people are always like, oh my gosh, like, where did that come from? That's amazing. How did you think of that? And it took me, I was like, it's not amazing. It's actually something really small, but it just pops up so easily for people with connectedness. So I think if you're trying to grow connectedness, learning to trust that intuition is so key, whether it's, in a Bible study or just anywhere, that intuition of like, I just know this, or I see this, or I feel this. If you can trust it, then you can test it. And then that's where the magic happens.
One of the strengths that I watch come from this one is the ability to organize an idea around a clear vision. And sometimes that clear vision is because I grabbed a piece of information from this article I read. And then I remember being in this meeting and this point came up. And then I remember 2 weeks ago, I saw a commercial and this came up. And all of a sudden, all these points come to this place of, I got it. And here's the vision. And then I've watched the strength connect people to it. This is the master level, right? This is masterclass. Connecting people to a vision where people are like, I see it too. Oh, right? Like, dun, dun, dun. Like, I'm seeing it with you. I'm connecting with you. And it's fascinating to watch that occur, especially when it's a connectedness with someone with high analytical, right? So someone that wants data and facts and, proof and that, and all of a sudden it's, oh my gosh, I can see the equation there. I can now see what you're seeing, but now I can put it into math, or I can put it into the causality of what you're acknowledging. And it's interesting because when we watch it, right, in a leadership mode, it is one of those strengths that can bring around it a real, almost a rally around the cause. Hey, we're committed to the cause.
I do think that is like master level connectedness. I think if we go back to the whole, like just looking at connectedness by itself, there are a lot of people that I've talked to with connectedness that don't desire to do that. They see it, but maybe their talents don't need to voice it, or don't need to rally other people around it, don't need to share it. They just see the connections. But yeah, that resonates with me for sure, with communication really high. I love, casting a vision. I also have futuristic really high. So an activator, so I'm ready. I see the vision, I either create it or I catch it, depending on whatever. And then I communicate it and I use my communication to activate people. And then we're going. So I love it.
Off to the races. Yeah. I have seen what you're describing, the quiet version of this. So let's talk about the power of this in the energy that a connectedness brings to a group. And I love the term unifier, a unifier. And this ability to find how you and I have points of connection. And someone with connectedness can actually help us find that we have more connections than we don't. And so you can almost see it in the ability to help resolve a conflict or help us find our way to an area of alignment or agreement when we don't yet have it. And I've watched this strength really rise up in that ability to help do that.
Isn't that so amazing? What a gift, you know? And to realize, again, if you lead with connectedness, to realize that not everyone thinks that way. Not everyone sees those connections. And so it's a gift that you can give, you know? So please do.
So when someone is working with you, so when you think about, again, isolating your connectedness, what helps you to get connected to it? What helps you arrive at the place of, because I imagine connectedness affects engagement for you. You're going to stay in the space. You said you were a missionary for 4 years. So something connected you to a 4-year commitment that you kept, and that's not easy to do. I mean, that's you know, those are not easy assignments, right? You know, you're going to give things up to go do that, right? And yet you stuck to that, and now, you know, clearly I hear in you your mission to help the helpers, right? You know, be that helper to the ones trying to do it, be a coach to the coaches. And, you know, now you're here. So connectedness is obviously moving in and through these spaces. So how is it like when we work with you, Bria?
I mean, it's hard to answer questions like that because I don't know. You know, I don't know. It just shows up in me. But when I was a missionary,
that's probably the best answer you can give, right? I mean, sometimes it is like, I don't know. It's just there, right?
Yeah. But people feel it. And I actually was just talking to our good friend Lisa the other day about this connectedness, and it gives off vibes. It gives off this energy of connection, and it attracts people. You know, I think there can be a vibe or a radar of like drawing people in, you know, inviting that connection. So people come, you know, random people will come up and talk to me, and it can help create a really safe place right away. You know, it can also just draw people in and form a connection pretty quickly, which I think is helpful when you're working with a coach or a facilitator and you don't have time to build a relationship over time, you know? So you can connect with people pretty easily, which I love. But the idea of mission and purpose is so true. You have to be connected to something bigger than yourself. And I don't think that connectedness could survive without that, you know? So whether it's the strengths movement, you know, I'm actually building a strengths community right now. I have this crazy grand vision of like a real community of all the people in the world who love strengths. Like I want to bring them all together. I want to gather them, you know, and give them what they need to go keep doing what they're doing, you know, and really like change the world, you know? So yeah, it can go a lot of ways. It can be very simple in the moment, connected me and you. It can be a connector where, you know, I meet you and immediately I'm like, ooh, you need to talk to this person, or ooh, I've got this book for you, or ooh, that connects to this. Or it could be, you know, something even bigger like world domination for strengths, you know? So
yeah, good. So friends, today, BreaRoper.com, BREA, Roper.com. You can find her on LinkedIn. She is prolific on there. You can also visit her site and learn all about her vision to connect the coaches in the world. So strengths goes everywhere. I remember early on, Bria, they used to talk about certifying 1 million coaches to have 1 billion people learn their strengths. You probably remember back that far.
I do.
When that was the vision, right? And everyone with connectedness was like, yes, let's do it. And it's pretty amazing, and it's awesome to see how in over a decade how this is shaped, and with all of the coaches around the world and all the practitioners and enthusiasts and participants, how there's such incredible growth and such an impact with the language of strengths, but certainly just the philosophy of it. This idea of, you know, and I'll give us a connectedness moment of connecting to our God-given strengths and recognizing that we have these innate talents that we can build from and become, you know, something that is really amazing, to do things of impact, of importance. And I have found that to really connect back to people with high connectedness. But also, if you're listening today, friends, Lead Through Strengths podcast has come back, and with her friend Lisa Cummings, a friend of both of us, you know, a strengths legend out in the world. getting to do that. And so, Bria, as we're wrapping up our time today, thinking about connectedness, any other points here about this one? If someone were to say, how do I build this? How do I grow in this area of strength? What are some ways that we could support them today?
The thing that immediately comes to mind, Brandon, is what I've heard from so many people with connectedness is that the first time they see it on their report, they're like, oh, I hate that. Or, oh, I don't want that. Or, oh, connectedness. And that was my journey too. It feels, I've already said this, but like so woo-woo. It's like, oh, that's not really a strength. It's too soft or whatever. So I would say just learn to love it. Learn to see it. Learn to love it. Then you can leverage it. Then you can use it. Then you can offer it. But you have to appreciate it about yourself. And I don't know, maybe it's just because it's so strong in me. It's hard to do. It's hard to see our own strengths. So hand your report to someone that you know, someone that you love, someone that knows you and that sees you show up pretty frequently in your life and say, do you see this in me? How do you see this as a strength? Let other people speak into that and affirm it if it doesn't feel great to you, because it really, really is. I've learned to love my connectedness over the years, and it's become a gift to me, building and strengthening that relationship even with myself, learning to hear the intuition, So just fall in love with it.
I'm gonna add to that. Some of the best coaches that I know in the world are high connectedness people. They do such a great job of helping people find the connections they can't see, so they can hear these things that you say and then bring you into a space of understanding occurrences and why and how, and excellent questions they pose. Excellent way of helping to bring around that place where the synapses all of a sudden close and, oh, I got it. Oh, the ahas. And so I'm going to echo what Bria says, that embracing connectedness is a fantastic way to develop, to grow it, to trust it, and to learn where it can take you. So with that, Bria, thank you so much for coming on the show today, helping us to unpack connectedness. Listeners, if you would like to learn more, we do have a resource for you. And if you email Brandon@34strong.com, we will get you a resource that will unpack not only connectedness, but all 34 strengths, and give you something to learn about how to even be a great team member to others, or them be a great team member to you. And you can access that resource just simply, again, Brandon@34strong.com. So with that, Bria, thank you very much. Anything big coming up? So I guess I could make you start to unpack the global strengths domination. But should we be looking out, like something coming soon this year? Is this next year?
It's coming soon. Hopefully by the time that this podcast airs. But you can go to my website, BreaRoper.com, and check it out. And if you don't see anything about global strengths domination, then send me an email or something and say, Bria, when's it coming? Because it's been in the works for about 4 years, and it's gonna be awesome.
I love it. All right, dear listener, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Coach to Coach.
Thank you for tuning in to the Strengths Whisperer Coach to Coach. Please feel free to reach out to Brandon to partner with 34 Strong for collaboration opportunities to serve your employees or clients together. If you are a strengths coach, lead a strengths-based team, or are a fan of strength, we invite you to receive our complimentary resource, How to Be a Good Teammate to Me, Understanding My Contributions and Needs. Email Brandon_Miller at 34strong.com to connect, and he will gladly share this resource that will continue to unlock the power of strength.